Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to First Parish UU in Medfields. I'd like you to take a moment and please note the announcements in your order of service. There are a few special announcements I'd like to draw your attention to. It is a new year, and here at First Parish in the sanctuary, the Building and Grounds Committee and the Worship and Music Committee have decided that this is going to be a food and drink free zone. So I know some of us like to bring coffee to church. Apparently some folks are tired of picking up and cleaning the spills. Worship and Music would also like to create a sacred space here. So if we could ask your help to leave those with you at home, in your car, and we promise we'll get you lots of drinks and beverages after the service. Thank you. Also, today after the worship service, there will be a brief congregational conversation with the Committee on Ministry. The Committee on Ministry consists of Duncan Glover, Jess Raza, John Cornett, Karen Mortimer, Kelsey Mortimer, Diane Maxon, and myself. And we're going to ask around 11:15 if you could just kind of take your coffee and snacks and join us over in the couches in the vestry so that we can hear from you, and hear what ministries here at First Parish are most important to you and how we can help strengthen them. Also, I'd like to invite you all next Saturday on January 11th to join us for Fair Foods. It's a project in Roxbury. We will be meeting here at 9:30 a.m. in the vestry. I'll bring bagels and coffee, and then after maybe half hour or so, we can all carpool in. Anyone who's interested can join us. This is a great project for people of all ages. My kids have been doing it since they were 3. Essentially, Fair Foods rescues produce from grocery stores and brings it to areas where there isn't great access to fresh groceries and fresh produce. They need volunteers to help unload the truck and assemble bags and things like that. It's a lot of fun. You can stay for half hour or stay for the whole 3 hours. It's up to you. All right, and finally, I'd like to invite Mary Corthell forward for a special announcement from the annual Fund Drive Committee. Now, as we enter into sacred space, please take a moment and silence your cell phones. Welcome to this place. Here we search for truth and understanding. We celebrate life and contemplate its mysteries. We share healing and wholeness. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, we welcome you to this congregation. Now, if you will join me in the responsive chalice lighting in your order of service, the Sacred Historic Meeting House. Welcome to this community of love and support. Welcome to this new year, filled with our tender hopes, our nagging worries, and perhaps our naive optimism for the future. Let us take a moment here in the cold stillness of January to reconnect with our true selves. But let us also remember to be gentle with ourselves when we miss the mark, when we fall short. As a new morning breaks here at First Parish in Medfields, let us hear the words of Samuel Beckett. Ever tried? Ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. And for all those that we've lost, perhaps recently or long ago, I'll now light our candle of remembrance. Dear God, Spirit of life and love, as we enter into this new year, filled with all our abundant blessings. Let's not forget those families that are not so privileged. Let's pray for the mom who has to take another overnight shift just to pay the rent and feed her children. Let's pray for the daughter who's left home alone again, trying desperately to take care of her 3 little brothers. Let's pray for the father sitting in prison, who will forever be defined by the crime he committed so long ago. Let us remember the words of solidarity spoken by Eugene Debs. While there is a lower class, I am in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. While there's a soul in prison, I am not free. Let's hold all of this in our hearts as we enter into a time of shared silence.
A Blessing for Traveling in the Dark by Richardson. Go slow if you can. Slower. More slowly still. Friendly, dark, or fearsome, this is no place to break your neck by rushing, by running, by crashing into what you cannot see. Then again, it is true, different darks have different tasks. And if you have arrived here unawares, if you have come in peril or in pain, this might be no place you should dawdle. I do not know what these shadows ask of you, what they might hold that means you good or ill. It is not for me to reckon whether you should linger or you should leave. But this is what I can ask for you, that in the darkness there be a blessing, that in the shadows there be a welcome, that in the night you be encompassed by the love that knows your name.
Ten years ago, my minister sat me down. He looked deep into my eyes and he asked, David, how do you experience God at work? I stared back. I got a little choked up, but I finally said, I don't know. Back then I wasn't even sure if I believed in God. See, at the time, I was in my first year of teaching art at the Trotter Elementary School in Roxbury, one of Boston's poorest neighborhoods. When I took the job, the school was labeled by the state a Category 4 school, a failing school, where the state had to come in, if we didn't get our act together, to take drastic measures, including possibly closing the school. My school served and continues to serve a population of children whose experience with fairness and justice, it can be quite bleak. You know, my students would often first walk into my art room at the tender age of 4 or 5 years old, having already experienced hunger, neglect, violence, abuse. These are things I certainly had no experience with personally. So let me tell you a few examples. My first week on the job, one of my kindergarten students, he drew me a picture, what he called, quote, a funny story. He really wanted to show it to me. It was about last night when his mom's boyfriend chased her around the house with a knife. The scariest part is he was laughing when he told me the story. Then there was a time in the art room when a 7-year-old child bit the paraprofessional teacher until she bled, while the other children cheered him on, saying, "Bite her! Bite her! Bite her!" I was horrified. And of course, there was the morning when I was outside during bus duty, having been working there for maybe a month, and we watched a young man who had just been stabbed bleed to death on the sidewalk. While the cops and the ambulances blared, my students continued to carelessly walk into school. Same day, different thing, just another kid murdered. So you tell me, where is God in all of this? Where's God when Deontay holds a chair up over his head, threatening to throw it at the class? And then he does. Where's God when Letitia tells me that the bruise on her leg is from a fight with her mom, and that they have been homeless for a few months and have been sleeping on their aunt's couch? Where's God when Soraya is so out of control that I need to hold her down physically while the whole class goes wild, and I, the professional in the room, I have absolutely no idea how to manage my own class? I was too scared to call the office, because if I did that, then they too would know I was incompetent. They discovered that I'm a fraud. I can't even handle a class of 6-year-olds. Where's God then? As I looked out at the faces of my students at the Trotter, my 8 years of prior teaching, all those things I was taught in school, they weren't helping. I learned many easy platitudes in my educational training. Always stay calm, confident, and in control. Never touch a child. Use consistent behavior management to set clear boundaries. It all just seems so artificial now. It certainly didn't prepare me for any of this. But I haven't even told you the worst part. The part I don't want you to know. And all of this craziness, it changed me. Now, I would leave work feeling angry, really angry. I felt like I had spent the day, the week, the month being attacked, brutalized. I just would get in my car and I would storm off. I began hating work. I began despising my students for treating me this way. I hated feeling this way, but I did. I even, in those moments, began questioning my own concept of evil. See, I've always believed, as a good UU, that God is the light. God's the home. The love that we're all part of. That we're all being drawn to. But now, here in the middle of all this chaos, I began wondering if maybe I was wrong. Maybe the devil, maybe hell, maybe it was all real. And the hate certainly felt real. Many nights driving home, I could actually feel the darkness start to take hold. And I didn't like it. How do I experience God at work? Well, back then, the truth was, I didn't. But yet, deep down inside, I knew somehow that my struggle to succeed at this new job was nothing in comparison to what my students were living with every day. The poverty, the neglect, the violence that they were experiencing there in Roxbury was shocking to me. And even more shocking because my family, which was not more than 6 miles away in Quincy, experienced nothing like it. As I would drive into the Trotter Elementary School every day, I'd wonder, why do we, Why do those of us on the outside, those of us with wealth and privilege, why do we not care more? I'm not sure. But my hunch is that it has something to do with the feeling that they aren't our kids. They're those kids. Or perhaps it's because we view the poverty in the inner city as someone else's problem. Well, to be honest, I can certainly understand this from my own perspective. Before taking this job, certainly it wouldn't catch me down on Humboldt Avenue. Why would I go there? It's not safe, right? Perhaps we on the outside secretly think that all of these problems in the inner city, the hunger, the violence, the drug addiction, the abuse, the neglect, maybe all of this can be squarely and easily blamed on the individuals involved. It's their own fault. It's just because they're lazy. They're doing it to themselves, If they would just get a good job, get off the dope, and straighten up, then we wouldn't have these problems. I work hard for my money, and I don't have any sympathy for those who don't. You ever heard anything like that? It is easy, makes us feel better, to go through life assuming that everyone else's life is similar to our own. We assume everyone has a mom and a dad who raised us with love and support. We assume everyone takes family vacations over the holidays. We assume everyone has graduated college and has a good job with health benefits, right? It's easy to imagine this equal playing field where everyone has the same opportunities in life, and therefore everyone will either succeed or fail based on their own merit. It's simple, it's clear, it's a very easy way to frame the world. And it's understandable why people try to make sense of our society this way. But sadly, it's a fantasy. It's just our minds trying to make excuses for a system that has historically and systematically punished the poor, the minority, the disenfranchised. And sadly, as I think we all know, this punishment continues. Well, on my slow bumper-to-bumper commute into the Trotter Elementary School in Roxbury every morning, I'd stare out the window. And every day at that same intersection, I'd see that homeless man, and he'd ask me for money. As I would, of course, look away, I would think, he made a new sign. His jeans really seem to be getting too thin for this January cold. I hope he has a place to sleep tonight. But did I roll down my window and give him something? No. I just quietly stared straight ahead. Inevitably, in those moments, my mind would wander, and then I would remember that in a few minutes, I'd be facing Mr. Reed's class with Kevin and Marcus and Soraya. I just didn't think I could deal with that class. My anxiety would get out of control, and I would plead with my conscience, and I'd ask, is it too late to call in sick? Well, the light would turn green, I'd speed away, and somehow in those moments, that homeless man, the man with the sign, he faded away. He became just an image, a concept. He simply became a projection of an injustice. This man was no longer a living, breathing person like myself, but an extension of my own conflict, my own confusion. I really wished I could fix his life. But who am I to do anything about it? I didn't roll down my window. That homeless man was about as real to me as an image on the evening news. And then if I did give him money, Would I need to then start giving money to every homeless person I saw? Well, to make a little sense of some of this, maybe we should look closer at this morning's Time for All Ages, when the kids acted out the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, just for a moment, let's imagine that Jesus of Nazareth, the rabbi who ministered to the poor over 2,000 years ago, was sitting here with us today. I mean, what would he say to us? What guidance might he offer here in 2020? Well, I don't know. You know, as a lifelong UU, I've never believed that Jesus is God, but that instead my theology says that he would be part of the divinity that we all have access to, that we're all a part of. And just so you're clear, when I use the word God, it's my shorthand way of saying that I'm referring to that great mystery, a mystery that's just beyond our understanding, but that somehow, we feel a connection to. So while I don't hold the Christian view of the divinity of Christ, I do have tremendous respect for the ministry of Rabbi Jesus. And by the way, the Hebrew word rabbi simply translates as teacher. For Rabbi Jesus witnessed firsthand the oppression and suffering of his own time, and he ministered to those out on the fringes of society. He ministered to them with love and deep compassion. And in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus gives us a choice to make. Choice as we meet that battered and bruised man lying on the street. What would you do if you walked by this man? Would you walk to the other side of the street? Maybe out of fear for your own safety? Would you pretend that maybe you didn't see him, perhaps thinking that someone better suited would come along? Would you throw $1 at him and think to yourself, yeah, he'll be okay? And wow, that really made me feel good about myself. And boy, now I don't have to feel so guilty about all my wealth. Or would you keep your dollar, worried that the man might spend it on booze or drugs? Well, as Stephen Colbert, the late-night talk show host and a devout Catholic, recently said, if this is going to be a Christian nation that doesn't help the poor, either we have to pretend that Jesus was just as selfish as we are, or we've got to acknowledge that he commanded us to love the poor and serve the needy without condition, and then admit that we just don't want to do it. And these are challenging words. But you know, we do know that the historic Jesus spent his life helping those who are most in need. Speaking out against the sins of greed and selfishness. Offering a hand to those in pain. You know, sure, it might be easy to paint Jesus through the lens of today's politics. You know, Jesus as the socialist, as the long-haired hippie, as the bleeding-heart liberal. But friends, I mean, to be clear, these issues of feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and welcoming the outcast, these are not political statements. These are biblical statements. So today in 2020, if we ask ourselves, do I love my neighbor? The answer for many of us would come easily. Yes, of course I love my neighbor. But the harder question is whether we'll do something about it. For if we are to take the ministry of Jesus seriously, we need to begin asking ourselves more challenging questions. Questions like, do I love my neighbor enough to sacrifice my own comfort and give away some of my own hard-earned money? If I do this, would it threaten my family's financial security? If I engage with the homeless, am I threatening my own safety? What about my sanity? Well, back at the Trotter Elementary School in Roxbury 10 years ago, toward the end of my first year of teaching arts, I started to ponder that last question. Am I willing to sacrifice my own sanity to help my neighbor? I decided that no, I'm not. I'm not willing to do this anymore. It's too hard. I can't take it anymore. 1 year of teaching in Roxbury is enough. And I had heard that there was an art teacher opening back in Quincy where I had previously taught. So I called the Quincy superintendent and was actually offered my old job back. See, the year before I had been part of these major layoffs, during the Great Recession. But now this year they had somehow found more funding and were rehiring. But before I could meet my old boss in Quincy and sign on the dotted line to accept the job offer, a strange thing happened. One quiet June morning before school, Isaiah showed up in my classroom. He wanted some extra time to work on his art project. He stayed and we chatted, we listened to music. We both got some work done. The next morning, 3 more students showed up. By the end of the week, I had 10 kids in my room an hour before school. They came to finish their artwork for our big upcoming arts festival, but really they came to be with friends, to connect, to relax. It was wonderful. It reminded me of what I loved about teaching. And that is when God walked into my art room. That is when I knew that somehow I wasn't alone. There was something bigger happening. God works in wonderful, mysterious ways. And on that day, God sent me Isaiah. And then Isaiah brought friends. But I also knew that God wanted something from me. A tiny seed was planted. And deep down, I heard this gentle voice encouraging me to stay and help it grow. And while the thought of staying and facing another year of this madness of teaching in Roxbury, it was absolutely terrifying. With all the behavior issues and the deep trauma, I really didn't have much say in the matter anymore. I knew what I had to do. I had to love my neighbor. Amen. Please rise in body or in spirit in our closing hymn, Lean on Me. This morning, I leave you with a Franciscan benediction. May God bless you with discomfort and easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and the exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and turn their pain into joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done. And as we prepare to leave this place, let's extinguish our chalice, knowing that its flame will stay with us till we meet again. Here ends our worship. Let our service begin.